clay pot shattered against the wall, its earthy scent mixing with the tense silence that followed. It was a beautiful, handcrafted piece, a wedding gift from Nia's mother, painted with intricate patterns of a flowing river. Now it was nothing more than 1,000 broken shards on the pristine white tiles of the kitchen floor. Quaim, a boy of 8, flinched, instinctively stepping behind his mother. His small hand gripped the fabric of her dress. David, his father, stood in the doorway, his chest heaving with a rage that seemed to consume him whole. His anger, once a rare volcanic eruption, had become a low, constant hum, a menacing presence in their home. The cause of this outburst? A misplaced set of car keys. Nia simply looked at the mess on the floor, her face a mask of weary resolve. The pot was a symbol of their past, a past filled with laughter, shared dreams, and quiet moments of affection. That David could so carelessly destroy it spoke volumes. "That was from my mother," she said quietly, her voice devoid of emotion. David, still caught in the tempest of his fury, didn't seem to hear. He turned on his heel and stormed out, the front door slamming shut behind him with a final, echoing bang. Nia knelt down and began to pick up the pieces, her movements slow and deliberate. Quaim watched her, tears welling in his eyes. He saw not just the broken pot, but the broken pieces of his family. That night, as David slept in a separate room, the house felt heavier than usual. Nia went to her studio, a place she hadn't touched in months. She sat before her easel, staring at a blank canvas. She had given up her art to support David's career and raise their son, but in doing so, she had lost a part of herself. That night, something shifted. She felt a burning desire to create again, not just for herself, but for Quaim. She would create a new life for them, one free from the constant shadow of fear. The next morning, David returned to an eerily silent house. The familiar scent of brewing coffee was absent. The front door was unlocked, and on the small table in the entryway, a note sat beneath a smooth, gray river stone. It was from Nia. The words were simple, yet they hit him with the force of a physical blow. "We have gone," it read. "We need to find our peace. You should find yours too." The silence that followed was a crushing weight. The house, once filled with the gentle hum of Nia's creativity and the joyous sound of Quaim's laughter, was now a hollow echo chamber. David walked through the rooms, and for the first time, he truly saw them. He saw the empty spaces on the walls where Nia's paintings once hung, their vibrant colors now just a memory. He saw Quaim's room, a small, child-sized world of books and toys, now silent and still. He found a small, unfinished drawing of a family of 3 holding hands left on the boy's desk. It was an image of the family he had so carelessly shattered. The following weeks were a blur of cold meals and colder nights. David's work, once his refuge, now felt meaningless. His friends grew distant. He called Nia, but her phone was disconnected. He visited her parents, but they turned him away with a look of profound disappointment. He had been so blind, so consumed by his own frustrations and pride, that he had driven away the only people who mattered. The man he saw in the mirror each morning was a stranger, a ghost of the man he used to be. The guilt was a heavy anchor, pulling him down. One evening, as he sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty space on the floor where the pot had been, the dam finally broke. Tears, hot and heavy, streamed down his face. He wasn't just crying for his loss. He was crying for the man he had become, for the pain he had inflicted. He had been so proud, so sure of himself, that he had never once considered his actions or their consequences. It was in that moment of complete despair that he found a flicker of resolve. He would change, not for Nia or Quaim, but for himself. He needed to become a man they could one day respect, a man he could respect. His journey was a long and difficult one. He found a therapist, a kind and patient man who helped him untangle the knots of his anger and resentment. He reconnected with his own parents, apologizing for his neglect. He began to understand that his anger wasn't about the car keys or the pot. It was about his fear of failure, a fear he had projected onto his family. After months of hard work and soul-searching, he wrote a letter. It wasn't an apology, not in the traditional sense, but an account of his journey. He didn't ask for forgiveness or for them to return. He simply told them that he was working on himself and that he was truly, deeply sorry. Weeks passed. Then one day, a small package arrived. It was addressed to him in Nia's familiar, elegant script. Inside, carefully wrapped in soft cloth, was a new clay pot. It wasn't an exact replica of the first, but it was similar, with the same flowing river design. The colors were softer, more hopeful. It was a silent message. It wasn't a promise of reunion, but it was a sign that Nia had seen his sincerity, that she was watching, and that perhaps one day the broken pieces could begin to heal. The new clay pot sat on the mantelpiece, a quiet, humble presence in David's otherwise desolate home. It was not a magical key to unlock a new beginning, but a fragile olive branch, a sign that perhaps, just perhaps, the door was not entirely closed. He ran his fingers over the same flowing river design, feeling the subtle textures and the weight of the hope it carried. It was a sign not to give up, but also a stark reminder that the path to mending was long and arduous. David's healing was a lonely but necessary process. He continued therapy, learning to identify the sources of his anger and to recognize the corrosive fear that fueled it. He began to practice mindfulness, a daily ritual of sitting in silence and acknowledging the emptiness in his home, not as a punishment, but as a consequence of his own actions. He spent his evenings not in resentment, but in reflection, writing. In a journal he had bought for himself. He wrote letters to Nia and Quaim, but he never sent them. They were for his eyes only, a way to put his thoughts into words, to hold himself accountable. He wrote about his day, about a memory of Quaim's laugh, about a color that reminded him of Nia's paintings. He was learning to see the world again, not as a source of frustration, but as a place of detail and beauty. Meanwhile, Nia and Quaim were building their new life. They found a small, cozy apartment near a park, and the space was quickly filled with Nia's vibrant new paintings. She was flourishing, her art a canvas for her newfound freedom and peace. Quaim, once withdrawn, was slowly coming out of his shell. He had made a new friend, a boy who lived in their building, and their innocent laughter now echoed in the hallway. Nia had received the last letter from David, the one where he detailed his journey of self-reflection. She read it over and over, her heart a tangled mix of cautious hope and lingering pain. It was a start, she knew, but trust was a fragile thing, and his actions would now speak louder than any words. The pot she had sent him was a test, a sign of her willingness to listen, but not to forget. One afternoon, Nia was setting up her latest painting at a local art fair. It was a colorful, abstract piece, a swirl of blues and greens she had titled The Flowing River. As she stood back to admire her work, she saw a figure approach from the corner of her eye. It was David. Her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't seen him in months. He looked different. His shoulders were less hunched, his face less hardened. He didn't come to her, but instead stopped a few feet away, his gaze fixed on her painting. He didn't say a word about the pot or his therapy or his letters. He simply looked at the canvas and said, "It's beautiful, Nia. It has so much life." His voice was soft, genuinely moved. It was the first time in years he had offered a compliment without a trace of sarcasm or envy. Quaim, who had been playing with her friend, saw his father and ran towards him, his initial apprehension giving way to an innocent longing for a parent she missed dearly. He threw his small arms around his leg. David froze for a moment. Then slowly, carefully, he knelt down and wrapped his arms around his son. He held him close, his face buried in Quame's hair. This was the moment, the culmination of his solitude and his efforts. He didn't ask for a second chance, but simply savored this one. Small, beautiful moment of connection. The path to mending was not a sprint, but a long, slow walk. The family wasn't whole again. Not yet. There were still broken pieces on the floor, and the new pot on the mantelpiece was still a fragile thing. But in that moment, in the middle of a bustling art fair, David and Quame's embrace was a silent, powerful testament that healing had begun. And perhaps, one day, they would be able to put the pieces back together, not as a perfect vessel, but as a mosaic of their shared past, their pain, and their enduring hope.